Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is a new horror comedy directed by Halina Reijn. This is her English language debut. She's an actor and director that's been working in Europe for a long time. And I gotta say that this movie has got a very different vibe from a lot of the other horror thriller slashers out there. It's a movie about a bunch of young, rich people that congregate in this mansion just as a hurricane is about to take over the territory. And so this group of people huddles together and decides to party and celebrate the fact that this hurricane is coming, and they're stronger than that. And then they venture into different types of party games, and they start a party game called Bodies, 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 where somebody pretends to be the murderer and go around the party and start killing people. And of course, it starts to really happen, and people start to die in this horror comedy. It's an effective counterbalance. What I really was impressed by, apart from the fact that all of the actors, you can tell they had to improvise a lot, and they had to bounce off of each other in some interesting threaded ways where everybody was, in a group dynamic and having to layer little bits of dialogue so we get to know these characters. Some of them are quite despicable, and some of them you're kind of rooting for, them to perish in some kind of grisly way because they're so awful. But I think the movie is also a bit of a commentary on our addiction to our phones and our digital lives, because all of the power is cut off, and so everybody's got to walk around with their cell phone flashlights and their screens. And sometimes it feels like scenes are shot and lit purely by the cell phones in people's hands, which makes the film, it's like you really have to lean into the movie, makes the movie feel very intimate and up close and personal. It also gives you a sense of you being amongst this disparate cast of characters. You are a character. It really puts you into the scenes. I thought that was quite effective. So much so that, in fact, in one scene, a bunch of the cast all slams into a car together, and it's this really tight shot, but the camera's in the middle of it all, and it's panning around all of these people as they're freaking out. And I thought that was just so unbelievably effective. I was also very impressed by the performances. Some of these actors have to deliver some really awful, hurtful lines and some revelatory moments about themselves and their own failings. And it's done deftly, and it's also almost like open wounds. You can kind of see it in actors' faces as they're delivering some of this stuff. Pete Davidson is in there. He's kind of like a sniper. You can just see his mind working. He's such a magnetic performer. It's hard to take your eyes off of him. He's obviously incredibly famous because of all of his stuff that he does away from work, but he's really strong on screen. I've always just thought of him as this goofball from Saturday Night Live and as a stand-up comic, but he's a really competent performer, even if he's playing a character that doesn't feel too removed from some of his onstage antics, some of the characters that he might have played on Saturday Night Live. He's just really cutting and quick, but funny and completely transfixing. When he's on, you're watching him, But Lee Pace does some good work in here as well. He's kind of like this old cool guy that's hanging out with all of these rich brats and he's trying to be hip and reminding me a little of the Steve Buscemi meme. What are we up to today, kids? I just thought that was pretty funny, but he does a really good job, and he's quite likable in his role. But all of the actors deliver. One of them is Maria Bakalova, who rose to fame in the last Borat movie, and she really steps up in this role. There is no real central protagonist, and I think that's one of the good things about this movie, because it's a whodunit, right? We don't know who is killing all of these people, and the camera is bouncing back and forth from the characters as they reveal more about themselves. But we do spend a lot of time with Maria Bakalova's B, and she's an interesting character. There's a lot more going on, and that's also an interesting part of this film, is that you can have this surface blush kind of reaction to these caricatures and the types of characters that are on screen, but then of course they all get their moment to kind of reveal that there's a lot more going on, and that these people should be nicer to each other and they should treat each other with a little bit more empathy. I was entertained, for sure. I was surprised that I enjoyed this movie as much as I did. I'm not a huge horror buff. This movie isn't really like a gross out, hack and slasher type thing. There are some gnarly moments for sure, but really it's a psychological kind of examination interfused with this horror comedy vibe. But everybody has done some really solid work here. I'm going to give Bodies, Bodies, Bodies a 7.5 out of 10.